The moments when silence weighs heavier than sound. You kneel, you cry, you plead, but there's no answer. Not a whisper, not a sign, just silence. It is in these spaces that the heart begins to tremble, not always from fear, but from the confusion of feeling alone. We are taught that God is near to the brokenhearted, yet in our most broken places he can seem most distant. This silence isn't merely the absence of noise, it's the aching void that follows a prayer uttered into darkness. And still, it is in this very silence that something deep stirs. Not the certainty we want, but the seed of trust we didn't know we needed. In silence, we are asked to believe not because we hear, but because we choose to hold fast to what we once knew to be true. The silence of God is not always a rejection. Often it's an invitation to trust deeper, to lean into faith, to walk not by sight or sound, but by something far more resilient. Hope in silence. He may not be speaking, but he is still present, hidden perhaps, but not gone. It was during one of those long winters of life when everything felt brittle, gray, and unmoving. The kind of season where nothing grows and even your breath seems to crystallize before it reaches the heavens. I remember walking along a path dusted with frost, whispering words I wasn't sure anyone was listening to. My heart was heavy with unanswered questions. Why now? Why me? Where are you? And yet all I received was wind brushing past the trees. But somewhere deep inside I felt the tiniest of pulls, like someone taking my hand without me seeing them. It didn't answer anything. It didn't change my circumstances, but it quieted the panic that often comes with divine silence. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. Silence does not equal abandonment. It might be preparation. It might be protection. Sometimes what feels like absence is the very space in which God makes room for something greater. He could be building in us the capacity to bear more love, more strength, more humility. In the quiet, he is still working. It's not the loud, dramatic proof we crave, but it's real. And slowly we learn to wait with purpose. We want the voice from the clouds, the parted seas, the burning bush. We long for certainty that silences our doubts. But what if the silence itself is a tool? What if it is not the absence of God, but the refining fire of faith? It is easy to believe when answers come swiftly, when the doors open with ease. But belief forged in silence, that is a belief born of trust. There is a man I once knew, a quiet soul who had prayed for his son for decades, not months, not years, decades. His son had turned away from faith, from family, from everything. The father kept praying, even when it felt hollow. He told me once it's like calling into a canyon and only hearing your own voice echo back. But he kept calling, and after 20 years his son came home, emotionally, spiritually, and literally. The silence hadn't meant that God wasn't listening. It meant God was working in ways none of us could see. Maybe silence isn't God doing nothing. It's God doing something deeper than we expect. A work in the roots, a transformation beneath the surface. And all we're asked to do is stay faithfully present. When a child cries out in the dark, they aren't asking for a lecture or a map. They want presence, a hand to hold, a voice to say, I'm here. So when God is silent, we instinctively feel abandoned. But perhaps he is closer than we think, not shouting over the noise, but whispering in the stillness. And the problem may not be his distance, but our tuning. Like trying to hear a song through static, sometimes we need to adjust the frequency of our hearts. Silence trains us to listen differently, to lean in, to notice, to wait. It's not a punishment, it's a preparation. In one particularly hard season, I remember writing in my journal, God, if you're here, say something. And after a long pause, I scribbled again, or if you're not saying anything, help me stay anyway. That became my prayer, not for answers, but for endurance. because in silence our faith is not confirmed, it is tested. And when it endures, it becomes beautiful, solid, grounded. Sometimes God's silence is not the absence of love, it's the presence of deeper love than we're ready to understand. There is an old truth I once heard that stuck with me. The teacher is silent during the test. That truth has anchored me more than once. Because there are seasons that feel like one long, excruciating exam. You're doing your best to recall what you've learned, to hold on to what's been promised. But without the reassurance of a nod, a smile, or a correction, the test feels unbearable. Still, the silence does not mean the teacher has left the room. It means the moment of proving has arrived, not to prove ourselves to God, but for us to realize how far we've come, how much we've grown. When God feels silent, maybe it's because he's already told us enough. Maybe we already carry the truth deep inside, and the silence is his way of helping us discover it, to own it, to walk in it. We are not abandoned. We are entrusted, given space to practice what we've learned. And if we falter, he's still there, silent maybe, but ready to guide again when the time is right. Silence doesn't mean he's gone. It might mean he believes in our ability to stand. There's something sacred about sitting with unanswered prayers. The world tells us to fix, to rush, to move forward, but spiritual silence is an invitation to stillness, to a different kind of growth. Imagine a seed buried beneath the earth. It's not dead, though unseen. It's becoming. Roots push down in silence before anything breaks the surface. And so it is with us. When God is silent, we are not abandoned. We are being rooted. It may be uncomfortable. We may ache with longing, but something is happening beneath the surface. Perhaps you've cried yourself to sleep. Perhaps your questions keep you up at night. That's not weakness. It's the honest heart of a seeker. And seekers are those who find, not quickly and not always the answers they expected, but they find truth, peace, depth. In silence, God may be softening the soil of your soul, preparing you to receive something bigger, more lasting, more alive than a simple yes. And so wait. Wait like the earth waits for spring, not idly, but with hope. Trust that the silence is not empty. It's filled with intention, with purpose, with the slow, loving work of a God who still moves in mystery. I once met a woman